We are back and we are joined now by Usamah Andrabi, Communications Director for Justice Democrats. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Usamah.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Emma.
So, what next? I mean, we were quite enraged by the APAC taking out of two of our best members of Congress, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. But this is a broader problem that the Democrats have to reckon with here, that clearly, nationally, there's a rejection of these politics. What is your view as we sit here, less than 48 hours after we got these results?
Yeah, I think definitely what we've seen is there's a problem with the Democratic Party brand kind of writ large, and that working class people across the country, more than anyone across kind of racial lines, do not see the Democratic Party as a party that represents their interests anymore when they did once decades and decades ago. And that's a problem of the Democratic Party's own making. We can point fingers at the right for doing what they have done and for galvanizing a base of people that used to be Democratic voters, but also our goal is to win these voters and to convince them that a better way is possible than fascism. And that starts by, frankly, putting a nail in the coffin of this Democratic Party and starting anew, because we have seen for decades and decades the same pundits, donors, consultants, and career politicians try and sell the same vision while being beholden to sort of the same corporations and billionaires that Republicans are, but trying to pretend like we're not. While Republicans are proud to be the party of corporate power and billionaires and right wing fanaticism. And I think that's what we saw this cycle. And it looks like, building a new Democratic Party through the leadership of some of these new young generation of progressives that have actually stood up for working class values, that have been uncompromised, from Gaza to union power to Medicare for all and a Green New Deal. And you're seeing it in the same states that we need to win these elections. You have Summer Lee in Western Pennsylvania. You have Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, who are, Rashida's outperforming Kamala Harris and Donald Trump both in Dearborn. Summer Lee's winning clear victories against Republicans in Western PA, which we used to consider sort of a bellwether for so much of the country. There is a different way that is possible. And, to your first point, it is a devastating loss to lose a Jamal Bowman and a Cori Bush from this Congress. These are two of the most working class leaders in our Congress, and we are a less representative Congress because of it. But, a lesson we should learn and a sort of a hope we should feel from it, which Cori and Jamal have kind of said as well, is it just shows how powerful our movement and frankly how powerful everyday people can be. If it takes 15 to $30 million to take out a former nurse or middle school principal in the halls of power, that means that we can elect more nurses and principals and union workers and carpenters to the halls of power and take out these billionaires or benefactors of billionaires who've been in power for fucking decades, who have driven our party into the ground.
So, I mean, what is that path then, right? Because I mean, your Justice Democrats has had success in ushering in the squad in 2018, and these were really progressive members in safe blue districts that ended up winning and pushing the conversation in a way that is beneficial to the country. But we also saw that there can be a flood of money into a race like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman that takes those folks out. I also observe that of, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Summer Lee, all were members of their state government prior to becoming representatives. So it's almost like they had more institutional support, and Cori Bush was thrown to the wolves, and Jamal Bowman, I mean, the New York Democrats aren't doing crap to help him. So, like, is there a lesson that you can take from that? I mean, how does Justice Democrats approach kind of putting together a crop of new candidates in this environment?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true that, Cori and Jamal were two of the most working class members of Congress and did not hold elected office prior to coming to Congress. And so that comes with a whole different set of, newness to the politics of Congress, the bullshit of Congress, the bullshit of the mechanisms that exist within our legislature. But, we should be looking to build a future that doesn't prevent those sorts of people from being in Congress, from being in halls of power. Just because Congress is kind of this political place doesn't mean that everyday people shouldn't be a part of it. And I think it's up to us, organizations like Justice Democrats, as well as the Democratic Party, to build the infrastructure to support those sort of people to actually be and stay in power. And to your point, the New York Democratic Party and the Democratic Party writ large, frankly, refuses to be that sort of party. And it's one of the many reasons why working class people across the country don't really see it as a party that reflects their interests or is fighting for them. And so, we should be, we are actively right now recruiting in districts across the country. And, you can go and nominate anyone in your community to challenge a member of Congress that you think should not be your representative anymore. And that's where it starts. And it starts by continuing to support those folks when we have these challenges. But, you also made the point that APAC spent $100 million this cycle in races across the country. Crypto spent hundreds of millions of dollars, is one of the biggest spenders in our elections now. These are the sort of existential threats to our democracy outside of Donald Trump's fascism that the Democratic Party refuses to sort of actually take seriously. And until we as a party take big money out of politics, take on APAC, take on crypto, we are not going to be this party of working class people. We are going to be the party that had a class realignment where we gained a bunch more voters over who make more than $100,000, and we lost a lot of voters who make less than $100,000. And they see that. They see these super PACs working, and they see Democrats as being the brand of that. And there needs to be a rebrand, that actually is real. And it starts from the bottom up. This is not an electoral movement, right? We are an electoral organization, obviously, but it requires the power of grassroots movements, the power of unions, mobilizing workers and building this movement to eventually elect working class leaders in Congress that can represent the needs of working class people across the country.
Yeah, and that hollowing out, it's confusing to, I think, a lot of pundits. I will contend that I thought Harris was going to win by a lot, and I didn't think that about Hillary in 2016, and that was when I was out on the trail and back in my old gig going across Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. So that's a blind spot perhaps on my end, but it is just shocking to me that, like, everything we've been told about politics, her ground game was superior. She raised a ton more money. She, like, all of the fundamentals, all of that speak. Oh, it was nothing. It was hot air. And to your point about money in politics, it didn't matter. Like, Trump didn't spend any money, and he just went on a bunch of bro podcasts, and he ended up eking out a victory. And it goes like, so what is all this for? What is all this kind of campaign speak and conventional wisdom about how you run a national campaign like this? We have to throw that out the window yesterday. But I mean, I thought that it could still carry the day. It's quite clear it can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, this Democratic Party has been the same kind of version of itself for decades since the realignment post Nixon. And I think we have seen since Obama, we had historic elections, historic kind of new versions of how to run a presidential campaign that we have refused to kind of get rid of, or refused to think that it's no longer possible. It is not 2008 anymore. It is not 2012 anymore. We've already survived a Donald Trump presidency. We've survived a fucking pandemic, and we're living through multiple genocides. Like, it is not the same world we live in anymore, and we need to retire that old way of thinking. I saw Jim Messina on one of the networks talking about how, he was looking at Bucks County, and Kamala Harris had this massive operation in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, that was so crucial to Obama winning Pennsylvania, a much better operation than Donald Trump had, and yet she lost. And it's just not enough to be a Democrat who has all these volunteers who are giving the same message over and over again. And especially, it's not enough to be a party that is just defending against something rather than building towards something. Yep. And I think that's been our problem since Donald Trump came to the scene. We have used him as a boogeyman, as the right often creates their own boogeyman, be it immigrants, marginalized communities of any kind. we try and make him a boogeyman, which worked in 2020. But that was a particular moment. You know, we were coming off of a pandemic. We were coming off of a Black Lives Matter movement that drove a lot of the grassroots energy towards Joe Biden, really towards anyone that wasn't Donald Trump. But we don't have that luxury anymore. We are the incumbents. We built a sort of future, and we saw some movement towards building that collective vision at the start of President Biden's presidency: child tax credits, care economy, investments, canceling student debt, union work, etc. But then we also saw them beginning to stop doing that. You know, child tax credit expired. We didn't fight for canceling student debt. We started continuing to give out leases to big oil corporations and saw hurricanes destroy half the fucking Southeast. And so what do we do? Like, we cannot have a, you know, left-wing presidency than a right-wing presidency and expect people to think that you are anything but hypocrites. And I think that's what Democrats are starting to see. We are so mad that everyday people don't see Republicans as hypocrites, while our party's leadership is doing the same thing over and over again, cozying up with billionaires and war criminals that are the same ones that have been dividing our communities for decades, and hoping that everyday people will come together on this massive coalition that has no unifying thread outside of Donald Trump is bad. And we have to be a party like the folks like Summerlee, like Rashida, like Ilhan, who actually build a vision for how to improve the lives of everyone, no matter their race, class, gender, and lift all boats.
Yep. And so in terms of making sure that the Democratic Party learns this correct lesson, how do we do that? Because seeing a lot of takes on MSNBC that Kamala was too liberal, that seems to be, because that's what the polling says, right? This is what drives me crazy. The polling says she's too liberal. Okay. What that means is woman of color, California. That's it. So you can't change that. She didn't mention her gender or her race at all. She would be asked, and this was smart, but it wasn't enough, right? Because she'd be asked, and she'd say, "I'll be a president for all Americans." But she still, even with all of these appeals to Republicans, even with everything that the campaign did on that front, she was still perceived as too liberal with the exit polling, and she didn't make gains with Republicans at all. So what is the answer? Because I don't think that perception of her is immutable. Like, if there had been a more robust economic agenda to go along with it, that too liberal thing may have not made a difference.
Yeah, I think, you know, possibly everything is hearsay, but I completely agree in that, like, the Democratic Party, every single time they try and tack right to win this mythical center that evidently is every single person in this country somehow, we don't win, because people who are convinced by right-wing policies do not want diet right-wing policies. And that's what we will always be unless we become the Republican Party. And so we need to stop trying to tack right and instead actually create an alternative. We should not just be a slightly different version in the center. We have to provide people a completely different vision for what is possible. On immigration, we have to provide people a different vision of why immigrants are crucial to our economy and why we should build a pathway to citizenship, which are very popular policies, right? Obviously, we have seen exit polls and polling that shows the right-wing policies on immigration are popular too. And that's because Republicans are putting in the effort to do that, to make it so that we scapegoat immigrant communities so that you don't pay attention while they're picking your pockets with tariffs and corporate tax cuts. And that is the work we have to do. And I saw fucking Tom Swazi tweet like 10 minutes ago that was just like, we need the problem is somehow, once again, defund the police. I'm like, swear to fucking God, like, when is the last time someone on a Democratic stage has said the words defund the police? Like, how many years can we keep writing on the left for losing elections we never lost because of that? And so what is so funny about people like Tom Swazi or all these other mods who are like, we need to get back to bread and butter, economic issues, everyday people issues. That has been the core base of policies on the left for decades. And the people who have obstructed them and stopped them are the Tom Swazis of the world.
But if that's Swazi's analysis, she did exactly what he would have wanted.
Exactly.
Like, she ran on economic issues. They were just like standard Democratic Party housing, like build engage with the private sector. We'll build housing, and she did talk about the child tax credit, but not enough. Like these were things that were broad consensus policies within the Democratic Party. So what is he even talking about? This is not an on his terms. She did exactly what he wanted. Okay, and bread and butter issues aren't what the problem. The problem is the lack of vision for those issues and the lack of boldness and the lack of connection to a broader movement. I mean, she did everything that he wanted on those terms, and they're still saying that they find the same conclusion. It's maddening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, which is, moderates and the center right will always find a million people to blame outside of themselves who have always been the fucking problem in this party. We continue to allow Republican lights in the Democratic Party and call it a Big Ten and then wonder why we lose to Republican rights. So, it's same old bullshit as always. And yeah, this is literally Tom Suozzi. I remember after he won his election, he was like, we need to go right on immigration. We need to do all these things. This is how I won this random seat. And it's like, okay, we did it. What happened? What was the outcome? This was the outcome. And, to your point, Kamala Harris had an economic plan, various different layouts. Sorry, my cat may come into the screen shortly if she makes it to this chair.
I would honestly love that.
But she, these economic plans, they lacked a vision. They lacked a simplicity that voters needed to hear about. Kate Arnoff had this great piece in the New Republic today about how, the economy was good. Industrialization happened. Manufacturing jobs did increase. All these things happened, but it doesn't change the lived reality for a lot of people on the ground. Increasing thousands of manufacturing jobs is not actually what the middle class across the country, the majority of the middle class feel, despite the effects on our economy. And so it's about actually getting to everyday people on the ground and understanding how can we improve your lived reality right now, not just here's these grand scheme, very wonky policies that folks don't really necessarily understand. I'm not saying they're bad policies, but they are not palatable to folks as much as, Donald Trump and JD Vance going up there saying some bullshit that sounds like, okay, they're going off the cuff. And unfortunately, that's what people like about Donald Trump, is that it sounds like he is truly saying what he believes, and it sounds authentic, which obviously his authenticity is psychotic fascism. But they don't see that from a lot of voters. And much of this comes with their misogynoir against Kamala Harris that we can't dismiss as a part of that. But it's also this is not a Kamala Harris problem, frankly. This is a Democratic Party problem. This was a problem since Joe Biden, very much made the choice to no longer be a transitional presidency to a new generation of the Democratic Party. And we tied ourselves to a status quo rather than tying ourselves to a hopeful future, which is how Obama won.
Exactly. Right. That's it's a problem systemically with the party, and it is amazing how Trump has taken out these like legacy establishment political dynasty families, from the Bushes with his humiliation of Jeb to the Cheneys and the way that Liz Cheney lost her seat because of Trump MAGA backlash, to the Obama legacy, which I include Joe Biden in. I'm not putting Biden in as the Bidens as a like a legacy family here. They're an outgrowth of Obama, and to the Clintons with his destruction of that legacy when he won in 2016. So the question is where do we go? And I guess that's where that will be my final question for you, Usamah, because there's no clear leader of the Democratic Party right now. None. And that's very scary to an extent. I had been hopeful that Walz and his kind of politics would have been in practice incorporated into a Harris administration. We'll never know. But who do we look to now, besides like the obvious progressive leaders in Congress.
And can I tag on to that? What did you think of Bernie's statement yesterday about the you abandon the working class, the working class abandons you?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, we put out a very similar statement after the election. So I agree with Bernie's sentiments, right? It is, and I saw Jamie Harrison quote tweet Bernie's sentiments, which is, it's frankly laughable to have the person who's leading the Democratic Party's deep failure say that this is an incorrect assessment when it's very clearly the correct assessment. We have abandoned the working class by cozying up to corporations and billionaires as an institution of the Democratic Party. And the working class people can see that because Republicans are telling them so. And it doesn't matter if Republicans are doing the same. They're the ones who are telling everybody that we are abandoning them. And it's pretty clear when Kamala Harris, brings out Mark Cuban and we are a party of celebrities and billionaires. And I saw even on MSNBC, people are like, well, it's crazy. We had Taylor Swift endorsed. How do we like that is not enough actually to win fucking presidential elections. Wonderful that we got this.
Glad the New York Times put that splash that on the front page, like it was going to change everything. Kill me now. White women who she's basically, the Pope for, went for Trump again.
Exactly. Anyway. And so we have invested so much time and energy into things that don't fucking matter, frankly. And instead of investing our time and energy, understand why are Latino men voting for Donald Trump? What is the root cause of that? What is motivating them to vote for what people think is against their own interests? What economic interests are they not receiving? We first need to understand our voters and stop pretending like we do and stop pretending to paint them with a broad brush, because everyone, including Donald Trump voters, are going to suffer under a Donald Trump presidency. And we should all, as progressives, want to be building a better future for all of them, even the people who fucking hate people that look like me.
I'm not sure.
That's okay.
Just cutting you off a little. I'm not sure if you saw, but there was a post that went viral that, of course, made me emotional, like about the idea of, Trump supporters will be there to build back up your future when it's decimated by this mass deportation, these tariffs, the tax cuts for the rich. Like, that is the appeal that we have to have going forward, not demonizing the people. And it's very hard for me right now to say nice things about the American electorate, because with everything that you're saying, there still is just like oh my God, they voted this was acceptable to people. Like, you have to fight that, because crying about that does nothing. There will always be a portion of the population that trends towards a right-wing, fascistic, nationalist politics. It's about engaging everybody else and turning everybody else out to think that there's a better future, to make sure that that is not appealing.
Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, they are being sold a vision, and it is a vision that appeals to them for various different reasons. And that's hurtful. That's problematic. It's all these things that we don't like, but it's because we are not giving them a better vision in their mind. And it's because we are not providing a vision where they feel like they are going to benefit from it in the future. And that's a problem. Why are Democrats, the party that used to be the party of a multiracial working class, not the party for Latinos and some Black men and some Muslim men, et cetera, et cetera? That is a Democratic Party problem. It's not an electorate problem. They are being fed, hours and hours of right-wing propaganda that works, right? And so, to your point of what's next, for us, more than anything, we should be looking towards, this is how I felt when we had these month of like, will Joe Biden drop out? What are we going to do? And it's just like, for years, we have talked about there is a new generation that we should be ushering into the Democratic Party and getting rid of an old generation. And I think that's what it started with. There is no leaders in the Democratic Party anymore. And so we need to uplift the folks who are actually doing the work, who are in these crucial states. We're not talking about just California Democrats, like the Republicans like to say. There's folks in New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, Delia Ramirez. These are the leaders of the future of the Democratic Party, if we ever want to have a Democratic Party that represents the needs of working class people. But this is a small group of people. 6 to 8 people is not enough in Congress to change the Democratic Party. And so we have to pick out the rest of them. We have to get rid of the Tom Swazis and the Josh Gottheimers and the Richie Torreses of this country that are actively opposing the needs of everyday people and obstructing our policies when we actually get there. And it starts by, for us, primarying them and kicking them out of the fucking Congress. And that's our job, but we have a very specific lane, right? For other folks, it's going to be building labor power and worker power across these districts to galvanize workers and everyday people towards a movement that improves their lives, and aligning with that movement the way that Sean Fain is calling for a general strike in a few years. Like, this is the work that all has to come together. It's not just going to be electoral. It has to happen on all levels. And that is going to be what we need to do moving forward. And so we're full steam ahead. You know, this past cycle, obviously, AIPAC spent a shit ton of money against us because they hate us and we hate them. And we lost 2 of our best members because of it. But it meant that we couldn't run new races. But this cycle, we're going to run a ton of races against a ton of really shitty Democrats. And so, you know, we implore others who feel like they're in a Democratic district that don't feel like their issues and their needs are being heard to nominate your friends, your families, your neighbors, your community leaders to be members of Congress, and we'll try and help them get there.
Where can people do that if you want to plug?
Yeah, they can go to justicedemocrats.com/nominate, and you can pick your district, whatever district it is, and nominate whoever you think is a better fit than your current member of Congress.
Thank you so much. We'll put a link to that below, or wherever people are listening to or watching this. Usamah, you are the first person who I spoke with since the election who gave me a little bit of hope. So I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Emma.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.